but also about Lust and Found, which is his film, and the adventure of how he got, or how he became the director, the producer, the writer, the casting director, and overall, of it. So it'll be an interesting afternoon. It's such a small group, so please, let's have questions. But I think Lawrence has a little presentation for us.
Yes, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Of course, I can talk for days. I have actually run summer schools where it's just been me and people suffering me for something like 7 hours for 5 days over a month. And I was thinking, how can I keep this going? But right, Odds and Sods. Why is it called Odds and Sods? That's always a good thing. It's simply because it is this collection. It was never meant to be a book as such. It was bits and pieces that I wrote for various magazines and competitions and what have you over the years. And the short story is not my natural milieu, so to speak. I'm a screenwriter, and I even really say I'm a TV series writer, because that's what I really like doing, but there's not that many opportunities to do TV series out here. And I was doing it in the UK, and when we moved out here I decided that I would write some prose fiction and just get away from the restrictions of TV, and found to my horror that nobody was interested in my prose fiction, and gradually I got sucked back into films, and the only game in town was independent filmmaking, which is a real flaky occupation because there's no money in it. And so on, and it's very hard work. However, that's what I'm doing, and I've just directed this movie and edited it, and just been taking it to the film market here to try and get distribution. I've got a guy, a sales rep on board today who really wants to do it, so that's good. And people keep saying I'm going to get, at least get my money back on it, which is unusual.
That's great.
That's because there wasn't that much money spent on it, but there was a lot of emotional capital spent on it, and I will be talking about that, and I'm going to have to do these things. Now then, if you look on the back of this book, it says, was it clever and downright annoying? It also says funny, I'm glad to say, and thought-provoking. So too clever by half. And in some respects, what I'm going to be talking about is really coping. I assume that you're all kind of writers or would-be writers or thinking about writing, otherwise you wouldn't be kind of looking at this sort of event. And so I'm going to more or less tell you about coping with the concepts of success and failure here, because you've got to give up that idea because it can drive you mad. And so these stories are in some respects dealing with alter egos. And there's a story in here called The End, which is about a guy who decides that he's going to give up his life and swap it for something else. But he's terribly worried about his old life, because where's he going to put it? Is he going to let it run wild in the forest somewhere looking after itself, or is it going to just lie at home just watching TV all the time whilst he goes off and has another life, a proper life? So there's an awful lot of that kind of disjuncture between your personality and who you think you really are and who you want to be, and so on. And it's peppered throughout this book. And I recall an agent saying to me once, he said, Lawrence, you're supposed to write it, not live it. And I have become a figure in a number of other people's books, a character in somebody else's books. They've told me, oh, this is based upon you, Lawrence, and so on. And I've got these books signed over to me from my friends. And in some respects, the little blurb on the back here by Nuri Vitachi, who's probably been around Singapore a few times, sort of implies that I'm a character. And once again, the book is about being a character. And this is something that befalls a lot of expats that live out in Asia for far too many years. They become classified as eccentric and characters, the eccentric Englishman abroad. And so I've decided I'll just go with that. So this book is full of odds, and a few salts. And I will give you a reading from that, but here we are. It says, a fresh journey around the mind of one of Hong Kong's larger-than-life characters. So I say I've become larger than life. And this is an epithet which I never actually thought would ever occur to me, because most of my life I spent sat in front of a computer or a typewriter, or even a pen and paper, which is what I started with, just sat there writing, being really boring, really dull, not going out, not doing anything, and so being larger than life doesn't seem to be the description that you would have imagined. So one of the reasons why I've gone into films, though, is because of the restrictions of literally being a prose writer. Being a prose writer, you're sat down, you're isolated for long periods. When you go into film and TV, though, you're out there with a lot of other people and interacting with them. And it's very often this is a real strain for the writer temperament. The writer is usually introverted, but the screenwriters and the TV writers, they've got to be extroverted, they've got to be out there, they've got to be talking to people, they've got to be pitching ideas, they've got to be trying to steal ideas from other people as well, and avoid having their ideas stolen. And it gets even more frenetic when you get into the production side and you get into a career of directing and so on. I never wanted a job, and being a TV writer always meant you had to develop in terms of getting a job in production. You could never just be a writer if you were working on TV for any long period. And after I'd been a writer there, my next step would have been, I did cop shows and such like, my next step would have been to get jobs as script editor and as producer and so on and so forth. But I felt that I was actually too old for that, and I wanted to write something significant. And I decided that the novel was something significant. I have changed my mind about that, however. So let's just talk about short stories a little bit. And I do regard them as a lost market. There used to be a big market many years ago when they were in magazines, would pay you for short stories and such like. But all that's gone. Now you have collections of them come out, but essentially they're an amateur form, and although a lot of people are reading them and writing them, they're doing it for the internet, they're doing it for workshops, and they're doing it in writing classes, but they're not actually selling them as such. And because it's a lost form, if you like, there's a lost market there. There's this. Oh no. It actually gives you an enormous amount of freedom. And so a short story is, if you're working within the film and TV industry, you're always being told to write for that market. You've always got these restrictions of budget and casting and scheduling, and also you're dealing with a collaborative art form. And if you're just the writer, and I say just the writer, all the other people who are adding to it, the production designers, the casting directors, the art director, the second unit directors even, as well as the director, and the actors, they're all bringing tons of stuff to it. And a producer and a director will work very hard on this film to a point where they think that the writer's job is a cushy number, and they just sat around getting drunk all the time, and now they're whinging that all of us are ruining their script and so on, when we're trying really hard and they don't understand the production process. So the writer gets sidelined in these things. And so this is an antidote to that feeling. This is something you're in complete control of. You can put it out for an audience if they want it. They can read it, and also if you're going to just be self-indulgent, it's always far better to be completely self-indulgent in a small form and play around with the idea. Now then, talk about strenuous narrative forms there. I think film and TV are nearly always narrative. You may get the odd Wong Kar-wai movie there, which is all mood and what have you. But mostly they demand a narrative which is a beginning, a middle, and an end. The short stories that you'll get in here, I do have beginnings, middles, and ends, not necessarily in that order, as they say, and sometimes there's a lot of beginnings and sometimes a lot of ends. And I have a story, like I said, called The End, which does start somewhere. I do believe it actually, what's its last words? I'll quote it. I don't think what the last words are. And
last word is the end.
And the last word is the end, because that's the start of the story that he's going to write, you know. And I play around with a character who's called I, which creates great confusion when you start reading that first chapter, because I is a he. And I will quote from it soon. Right, so basically what's in it, and people have asked me, what's it about? And I've said, it's about 222 pages. Of anything that's just was lurking around on my hard disk at the time. All the really sexy stories were deleted by Proverse Press, who decided they couldn't be seen writing pornography, publishing pornography, but I wish they'd put an editor in there who could actually take out a few commas and put a few commas in. There are some typos in there. What do I conclude in this thing? It says, if you're going to be tattooed with real art. If you're going to be a ritual puller, it is best to have two legs. And if you are going to write stories about Tang Jiangsu and George Feydeau in the same story, always remember that your audience is actually more interested in internet porn. So these are the serious points that I'm making with this book. And one of the things I noticed when I read through this was how much my university ambitions for writing were included in here, despite being so far away in time. And somehow, because this is a book of my self-indulgences, I can see that this was something that I was always thinking about then, and it was the type of writer I was trying to be when I was younger, and it still sort of lurks around the pages here. So in some sense I see this as my idiot savant children, if you like, that have finally been let loose on the world. They are clever little ideas, perverse and bizarre on occasions, and I'm hoping they have a kind of life of their own. But they're the writer I was before I'd gone to Hong Kong and become this other creature, this character there. So in some sense I think this may well be the last Lawrence Gray book. So get it now whilst it's rare, because whatever I do next will be to do with film and so on and so forth. There may well be a novel floating around. So I thought I might just read a few openings here. Just to show you the eclecticism of it, I have a story based upon Julian of Norwich, a medieval mystic, an anchorite, which does deal with, which is written without punctuation, just to be really smart ass and clever. And I'm trying to find it now. Do you know which page is that? I'm not going to bore you with a big long reading of anything else. I just thought I'd open up a few of the paragraphs just to... oh, that's right. 187. And then we move on to other stuff. Ah, here we are.
187.
That's right. Now then, this is experimental, to say the least. I say experimental, but Samuel Beckett did it much better. And so this is the leftovers of his influence on me. So last brick in place, just a hole for the food to come in, waste to go out, light for the day, dark for the night, pallet on floor, kneel during day, lie during the night, notebook and pencil to record thoughts. All I need for the soul of a righteous man is the throne of God. Concentrate on what is important. Nothing will distract. World of temptations. Strange that world made that way. Test of our rectitude. Now then, if you are very knowledgeable about the ramblings of Julian of Norwich, written in Middle English, you will notice that it's full of quotations from that, and I do love quoting people. And you will find throughout here, for instance, there's a story made up entirely of titles from kung fu movies, and that's about the tattooed man. And I'm going to say, I think you'll have to read that one for yourself, because it gets rather convoluted because it's all these titles put together. But I've also got a story about Thomas Pynchon meeting up with Clint Eastwood. So once again, the film idea in there, and. I'll just read this, see if this actually confuses you endlessly. Entropy meant to be. Now, if any of you know about Thomas Pynchon, he writes these great rambling, incoherent books which the critics love and people buy. And if you're a student, you've got to read one of these books, and you would write your PhD thesis on it. And he's noted as a recluse. I think it's, like I said, when you're writing these big, long pieces of fiction, you just end up being a recluse, and you go into yourself and you keep away from the rest of the world. So that's always been something that terrifies me, which is why I haven't written something like that. But I knew young Bob Pynchon when I was a kid. We called him Bob because it was short for Tom. We didn't know any better. It was just after he published his story Entropy. Everybody thought he knew what he was talking about, but it was all in the title. The what that he knew, that others thought he knew, was a lot, but was nothing or something. Clint, on the other hand, had been no youngster when he first came across the octopus that glowed in the presence of a missile strike. He thought it was cool. Plenty of time to duck and cover. Barbecued, he thought it would give him the same powers. He played Misty on the ukulele after sucking it off the stick. It was his inspiration. Screw all that rawhide shit, he said. Let's get into the movies before it's too late. Now then, as you can see, this is written in after the style of Thomas Pynchon, and once again, references abound. Not all of my stuff is full of references. I'll go to the end. That's the name. I woke up and decided that he would have to change his life. He wanted to leave it behind and take up with somebody else's. One option was to offer it in part exchange, but he might want it back, and doubted that he would get much for it. Another option was to leave it at home, cleaning up the place. But he knew from his experience that it would probably sit in front of the television awaiting food until the electricity failed, whereupon it would expire in the dark. He has struggled with this tendency night and day, and it was one of the reasons he wanted to take a holiday from it. In the end, he decided that he would turn it loose in the wild, where the cycle of habits might be broken. So, I'm hoping that's intriguing you to read the rest, because Mao turns up in that one. The publisher said we can't use the word Mao, we've got to use M for some reason. I think he thought that it would be banned in China, but I very much doubt anybody would notice, quite frankly. The opening story is Digital Deficiency Syndrome, about a man who cannot see electrical equipment. It disappears from his life. When he woke from the coma, the first thing that he noticed was that he could not see his wife, which perhaps indicates something strange about his wife. He could hear the murmur of her voice in the hum of the hospital noise, but where the voice came from was a void around which dazzling light from a window fitted with slatted blinds flickered. Was it Jean, Jane, June? For some reason I've got names with the letter J in. I have no idea why, totally subconscious. There must have been something horrible happened to me by wearing a pair of jeans or something, I don't know. When Dr. Thism loomed into view, his grinning face was clear and his words cut through the buzzing and clanking. Words like stroke, lost mental functions, speech impairment. Apparently things were serious, but not hopeless. Was this then the famous Dr. Thism whose therapy and scientific credentials were so impeccable that the rich and famous brain dead called him for second opinions? And so on and so forth. Right.
I was going to just, I mean, since
Yeah.
you were reading,
Yeah.
it's full of these, fun little experimental writings.
Yeah.
But also there's some really incisive, not satire, but in Lost Units,
Yeah.
when you talk to the Shanghai,
Oh, yes,
when
yeah.
it's in Shanghai and you're talking about creating a film, sort of
Yeah.
the early co-production type, and it seems like it's a commentary on
It's,
your experience.
Yes, I was going to say the where you least expect reality to impinge is actually, or practically verbatim conversations I've had with people.
Yeah, so I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting, and the about the Hong Kong
Yeah.
TV industry as well, the one-legged
Oh,
rickshaw.
one-legged rickshaw boy.
And I thought some of those short stories. I don't know if you'd like
Yeah.
to talk about reality, the reality of these stories,
Yes.
where it's not just.
Well, the one-legged rickshaw boy is based upon my diary. I wrote a film called a TV series. I wrote episodes of a TV series called Yellow Thread Street, and this was a big hairy-chested TV series with pump-action shotguns and heroes and villains and triads bouncing around, and it was a hugely expensive undertaken by Yorkshire TV in Hong Kong, and it got my episodes got 12 million viewers, and each episode, and people would die now to get those sort of ratings. But in those days, 12 million viewers, and so they never made the second series. Second series was going to be even better. It was much better, actually. We really then got to understand what Hong Kong was about and how the casting would it affects how the shows could be written. So there's going to be more stunts, more explosions, and more money. But at that point, the more money bits was the cutting edge. That's the thing that stopped it. And also the fact that a guy called Ranald Graham was the producer on the show, and Ranald was an eccentric man. He's the P in the story. P for producer, but it's Ranald Graham. And literally, he did have this thing about my shoes. Because at that time, I was a rather down, deadbeat cop show writer in the UK. I was still wearing clothes that I'd been wearing in the sixth form, and this is a 30-odd-year-old guy. I had been living in abject poverty for so long, I just never knew how to operate in any other way. And he was convinced that I was wearing some dead policeman's shoes. And he had this thing about my shoes and where'd you get that? And it was always this, God, where have you been, Lawrence? What is it? He said, you're like one of these old cars that people have put in a garage that have only been driven on Sunday by some old woman, and then now they've let you out into the world. And in essence, that's what happened with the Yellow Thread Street. It was my first real outing into the rest of the world. I really had led this very insular existence, just writing. And suddenly I was out there in this great adventure, because it was 1989, Tiananmen Square. The whole production process was disastrously chaotic. Enormous amounts of money going around. They were fighting with triads and the films. We had typhoons, we had riots, and everything was going wrong on this show. And I'd been put out there and lost. Literally, when I arrived, they put me on in a cab, sent me to an apartment. I got into the apartment and there was nothing in it.
No toilet paper.
No toilet paper, no lights, absolutely nothing. And I didn't know where I was. I had no phone numbers, and they didn't give me any means of communication. And I didn't have any money on me. And I was just left there, and I was thinking, this is typical. This is how they treat the writers on the show. And the story in here is based upon my adventures during that period. So I've turned it into a comedy. It was kind of traumatic, but it's opened up my eyes, and this is one of the reasons why I ended up in Hong Kong, because my wife, a couple of years later, was offered a job in Hong Kong. And I said, bugger it, let's just go, and I'll write my own series. So and I just wanted the time, and for once in our life we would have a steady income, as opposed to this odds and ends, which hand to mouth stuff. And so it was great relief to go there and be able to travel and do things. And I wrote a TV series which the BBC commissioned, but then things happened at the BBC and it all went haywire and broke down. And then I turned to writing these novels which nobody wanted. I should have stuck to writing the TV. I should have pushed it forward. But I was so pissed off with them on not making this series that I just went off into a different direction. This is something, if you're a writer, find what your niche is, ignore the criticism of it, just get better at it and push it forward. What I did, I changed tack a number of times, and this actually means I'm starting a new career each time. It takes 10 years to build a new career as a writer. So I always think 10 years from now, I've got to be there. And stick with it, never, because if you chop and change, I wrote for the theatre, then I wrote for TV, then I wrote novels, and then I started writing for film and so on. And so each time I've had to restart again. You're not always good at everything. And now, what's the writer on this? Originally, this guy, Drew Wilson, wrote this script, which was about a couple of guys that liked Filipinas and got involved with them, and they found this bag of money, and the bad guys came after them, and it was full of the Filipino lifestyle in Hong Kong, and it had this problem that people said, this is pretty racist, really. And it was brought to me, and the guy said to me, look, and he fell out with, the producer fell out with this guy because he wanted him to, the guy was wanting to direct the film, and they kind of didn't get on with each other at this point, and it was brought to me and they said, can you rewrite this in some way? And I said, no, you can't afford me. And then I said, then a light bulb went off in my head. I said, well, if I direct it though, I'll rewrite it for nothing. And that was a fatal decision, because now suddenly I rewrote the thing, it began to get traction, suddenly got people interested in making the movie and put money into it, and I just went along with this. However, the producer suddenly decided that he didn't want to continue with the project, and so I had to then take the project over, and then suddenly I'm producer on this thing, and I don't know anything about producing. Now I know. I'd done some short films, but doing a feature film is very different, because you're involving yourself in the politics at this point, and the politics of a feature are actually very intense, because you need to hire people for a month or so of their lives. They need to pay rent. You actually have to pay them real money, and you have to get them on contracts, because as soon as you start paying people, you cannot assume that they will turn up for the show. They may say, oh yes, a little bit of money, I'll be there. You've got to get them on the contract. You've got to get that contract, get it signed, and make sure that they go along with that contract. As soon as you get into those sort of negotiations and you get the lawyers involved in the whole thing, prices go sky high, and people's suspicions in Hong Kong go up, because suddenly they're used to these low-budget movies being done in a very ad hoc, semi-professional manner. You shoot a couple of weeks or a couple of days a week, and you fit it in around people's jobs and so on. That was not going to happen with this, because I've seen so many of those projects just peter away, and you shoot half a film with one bunch of characters, and then you've lost one of the actors. They get pregnant, they get killed. It has happened in a friend of mine's film, and the longer you do it, the more problematic these sort of schedules are. So I wanted something done very professionally, and with well planned and military precision. I had this fantasy I was going to make this film in a really kind of systematic fashion, and it was going to be the best ever commercial film done at this level of budget. If I was making, for instance, you've got Anthony Chen doing his Ilo Ilo. Now, when you meet Anthony Chen, you'll say, Christ, this guy's so together, so focused. He is a young guy who knows everything. He knows the business. He knows how to put money together. He has got a real sharp vision. If you met me at that age, you would say, God, this guy's a deadbeat character who's lived far too isolated a life. And so but now I've come into this thing and I'm not that focused. I've done bits and pieces from all over. And so I have to gather my thoughts, and I've got one sort of genre of film in my mind, but I can then cast, if I cast this person, it's another sort of genre. And because I'm trapped in a production where I will lose the rights to this production if I do not shoot on a certain day and start shooting, I have got to deal with whoever turns up and manipulate the show to fit these characters. And this is what TV writers do all the time. You're forever changing scripts to fit scheduling requirements and to fit budgeting requirements and so on. And I brought that element into doing this film with the consequence that if there is a criticism of it, it has a sort of TV feel to it. The thing that people have said about it is that it's entertaining, and then it rattles along and has a good pace. Eccentric, of course, as one might expect, but in my mind I'm thinking the next one I do, I'm really going to be really focused on exactly what I want, but I have to have the money. Anthony Chen did it was $700,000 US, his movie. This is much more like $70,000 US, and consequently it's full of my compromises. Now then, I wish I could say it's an uncompromised position. I had a really sharp vision, but in essence, my only real vision of this was to finish it and get it made and get it done, as opposed to allowing it to just collapse in. I suppose I would have had a fantasy world of how this film should be, and if it's not going to be like that, it would just collapse. But I had to keep changing my position just to get it through, just to get in the end. For instance, the main character in this is an Englishman, but his name is Andre, and the original character in the script is a Russian. But couldn't find a Russian that could carry that part, so it becomes an Englishman. And so on and so forth. The casting was changing. I lost the cast just before the film started, after a number of weeks of rehearsal. Suddenly I had to recast it, but I still had to start shooting on that day because my rights to the film disappeared, despite the fact that the script now is 100% mine. And Drew Wilson's going to turn up at the showing and he will throttle me. He will hate me until I point out, well, actually, it's quite popular, and you get your credit on this thing. Because I will give him the great credit of actually coming up with the actual concept and making a film that could be done at this sort of level. And so, I give him a lot of kudos for that. But he will hate me because I've done the typical thing that a writer-director does. I've rewritten him. Right. Right. Questions from you before I go on to more of that film.
Just point out that the actress is Singaporean, and I think you.
Yes, Vivian Sang.
Yeah, you had some casting.
Oh yes. Well, I can't. There's an awful lot that I can't say in public that went on with this. But let's just say that I had a dispute with one of the actresses before this happened, which was rather tragic, and I wish that we'd managed to resolve the whole thing amicably. It was over contracts and it was over her position in the film and the relationship with the other producer that was involved in it and so on. And it was quite a violent argument that we had over the thing, and I suddenly had to recast at the last moment with her. I wish she was in the film, but we've got Emily down the bottom who took over the role, and she came in and we were rewriting her parts to fit her right up to the last day of the shooting, and you can see on her face on occasions. This, what the fuck have I let myself in for? You know, she stepped into this role, and she was trying to make it her own. So she's very brave of her, I thought. You know, we had quite a lot of dramas around this, and. In private, I might tell you about them, but I can't tell you about most of these things in public.
I have a question. I think that maybe since you're talking about short stories and then writing for the screen and writing for the stage, a lot of writers will, they're sort of keen to stay writers, even though they may not have a lot of autonomy. But then they hand off the project and then it's done, and they don't really have to worry about what. But you're very much interested in becoming, the filmmaker, the director, the producer of the project. Can you tell us why?
Power, because the writer has been sidelined, and I just wanted to be a writer because I was an introverted character. I didn't really have much in the way of social skills. I was not a particularly educated person. I didn't come from any literary background, so I didn't really know what being a writer entailed. And so I just thought I'd just sat down and write, and it was better to call myself a writer than unemployed layabout, really. So I just continued writing at that point, and I never thought I could go off and do anything else, because I really didn't have that much exposure of being in the public eye or anything like that. However, I found it terribly frustrating. Even if you're writing novels and so on, you still have to go out and you still have to pitch your ideas, you still have to get the publishers, and the best way of doing it is to go to the parties and to drink with the people and to get the connections, to get in the magazines, do an article in the New Yorker. Suddenly publishers are interested in you. You've got to begin to play the game. Now then, I wasn't playing the game at all, and my writer heroes, the Kafkas and the Becketts and the James Joyces, they didn't play the game, at least I thought they didn't. And then when I discovered later on, well, Kafka's constant gripe is, oh God, I've got to go to this boring job in the insurance office, and I wish I could get a writer. Perhaps I've got a publisher now, and they said they're going to publish my next thing, and he's playing that game, and he's going to the parties trying to meet people and so on. Edgar Allan Poe, another outside, he then got into it through bludgeoning his way into a magazine, becoming a magazine editor, where he then slagged off all the other people. In other words, even when you're writing something as insular as a long-form novel of some sort, you still have to play the game. And as soon as you start playing the game, you will do better, but it takes you away from the writing. Now then, I stepped into TV because I bumped into a guy in the mall. There's the place called the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts, and there was a horrible band playing, and I escaped from the noise, and I went to the bar, and I got talking to some guy there who was a very fidgety character, and I was complaining that I wasn't getting due respect as an author or a writer. I couldn't get anything on the theatre. I was miserable and drunk, and this guy said, well, what about TV? I said, oh, you can't do anything in TV because you've got to get something on in the theatre. He says, that's not true. There's plenty of work in TV for cop show writers and what have you, series writers, and because nobody takes it seriously. They think it's just something that you just do in between writing novels and so on. But if anybody takes that seriously as a professional way, there's a career there. And I go, and he turns out to be the head of drama at BBC. And I thought, I've just met God, and he's just told me what I should be doing. Yeah. And as soon as I get into that, though, then the politics becomes obvious that the politics is very important, and drinking with the right people becomes very important. TV writing these days is always about compromising your position, trying to make something that can be made for these particular audiences, because it's all advertising requirements in the UK. It's all funded by advertising, or it was then, and so you have to have your act breaks at a certain point, so they can put their 3 minutes worth of adverts in at this point. so you have your cliffhangers and such like. And if you write for MediaCore here, it's even more stringent. And you do 5-minute little sections. Each one of them's got a cliffhanger on it, and you pinpoint exactly where the break's going to be. And of course you're working within the MediaCore's public service requirements. And there's an element of propaganda that comes into that. And when I teach here, I would say, you may think it's all propaganda here, but it's the same in the UK. When we did the bill, we could not show a crime being committed. This is a cop show. You cannot show a crime being committed because it's about the police force. And they say police and crime got it. And no, you could not show a crime being committed because the policeman comes and deals with the crime after the event. I said, well, some policemen are criminals as well. Oh, no, not our criminals. So propaganda is the name of the game everywhere. Whoever's paying you demands a certain amount of respect from you. In this film, one of the people that put some of the money in is Arts Futures, and they were very kind to me, and they lent me one of their officers as one of my sets and so on. And I do make a bit of fun of the arts, set in the arts world, and I'm a little bit nervous about how they might react to that, but it's too late now. I don't have to worry too much, but I'm a little bit nervous about some of the gags in there about selling Chinese art to the masses and such like. That is not necessarily recommended behaviour, but I couldn't resist making fun of it a bit. But always, this is going to be the case that if you get people with a lot of money, putting a lot of money in it, they will take a look at it. They will want their political position or their morality imposed upon it. People who published this had me removed all the swearing, as much of the swearing as possible. They had me remove a story which featured anal sex in it, because they don't do that in perverse press anyway, or perverse press. Because it's a literary, I'm saying, well, there's plenty of dodgy sexuality in a lot of literature, but not in Hong Kong's literature. So, everywhere there's some sort of politics involved, and you're always involved in propaganda in some way.
Would you like to take some questions from the audience first?
Oh yes, let's take some questions now. Before I put together very hastily, because I was trying to get to the Hong Kong film market with the project, but I didn't have it ready, and this was put together very hastily. And this is not the film I made. This is almost the film I made, but not quite. The film I made is not as carry-on and quirky as the poster. And when I took this to the markets, I had showed this up, and they were saying to me, "Oh, this is what we could sell." And it's these big posters with a guy with rippling muscles and a big gun in his hand, black and red colour all over it, not this green stuff, and this weeded little guy with a what's he got on his with a sledgehammer? What's that all about? And it didn't say to them quirky gangster movie, it just said quirky, eccentric, strange film. And they didn't like Vivian. That picture of Vivian, they said, looks like one of those clowns that you throw balls into, and so on. And I thought, oh, right, okay. So we had to change the poster rather rapidly. And now, as you can see, this becomes a different film. And it's the same film, but found a different edge to it. Because what they said, horror, crime, that's what sells. And so, font, horror, movie, font, obvious crime, guns, girls. This is what is selling. And they even a catchphrase, which I think will... where's the fucking money is a phrase that he uses quite frequently in the film, and that is the cri de coeur of the screenwriter, especially in this neck of the woods. You're always trying to get money out of people. They will promise you it and they will never pay it. You want it up front, get it in your pockets before you start writing anything, but they will say, oh, it's coming. MediaCore, I love what they do. You sign a contract, they pay you money up front.
Not always.
Not all. Oh well,
Not
they pay
always.
you. They pay you money when you give them the first treatment, though. They pay you, and they do
Well,
pay you.
At least they have a timeline.
Yeah.
However,
The timeline's sometimes a little bit slow.
Yeah.
But yes, they do pay you.
That's it.
they will pay you.
They will pay you. You
That's
do
the
you
nicest
sign the
term.
contract, and they pay you. And that's and not only that, they will make it. You know, very rarely do they pay for anything they don't. You know, and they won't interfere. You write it, and you kind of think, I'm waiting for them to come back and make me rewrite it, because back in the UK, it's, you know, it goes backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, and it's always somebody trying to do something, change it, and this, that, the other. Here, it's just bang, script, oh, go on to the next one. You know, you don't have that kind of pressure on you, so it's quite nice in that respect. But on the other hand, maybe they should put a bit more pressure on you. You know, I think they should put a little bit more effort into the writing side. But that does actually put pressure on you as a writer as well to perform, which is not necessarily good for you. It can drive you crazy. But on the other hand, I kind of see, from a producer's point of view, I can understand that, because I've now dealt with writers as a producer, and writers are a real pain in the arse. They're whingy, needy characters, and they're uncertain about this, that, the other. They don't quite know what you're trying to get at, and they don't quite deliver as well as you thought they could deliver, and so you cannot tell what you're going to get. And this is the trouble with dealing with any artistic proposition. You can commission it, you can brief them, think they've understood it, and they haven't. And I've done the same thing myself as a writer. I thought I've understood, and I produced something, and they've gone, oh, this isn't what we thought. And I said, well, you agreed to this, and you agreed to that. And he said, yeah, but you know, the script is different. I don't see how I could have written any other kind of script from the treatment that we worked on for so long and agreed on. But, you know, this is what happens. People get in their mind an imaginary version of what they think they're going to get. And somehow it's very hard for any writer to hit it on the nail. So the development process is an art in itself, and I don't think enough people actually study it or work at it. I think writers' rooms are very good at that, because then you're surrounded by other writers discussing things, and the work itself then develops in a properly collaborative environment. But when it's really just a producer and one writer, I mean, I think those kind of positions, it's very hard to fulfill the brief in an effective and an efficient manner. If you're just writing for yourself, short stories, great. Which, you know, when we get to that. Screenwriting. A little bit about screenwriting and the difference between short stories and screenwriting. Now then, it's to do with design. The screenwriter designs the movie. It's not necessarily, it's not about writing, it's not about the words as such. It's not about, there's a mode of thought that you get into when you're writing prose. It's much more an interior monologue that you have. It's to do with the mood that you're in when you're writing. People write to music and do all that. When you're doing screenplays, you start off with the idea and concept, discussing that. You're discussing the market, you're discussing this particular genre that you're dealing with, you're discussing the budget levels that you're dealing with. You're coming up with ideas that can be made, not just an idea. Now, if you're a writer-director and you're just going to make your own film with your own money, then you can make, you can be as indulgent as you like. But unless you've got very famous actors as your personal friends who will just turn up and work for nothing, you're going to be dealing with amateur actors who are also going to be turning up. Are they good actors? Maybe. You might get lucky. If you can find a way of using ordinary people in an interesting way, that's good. But you're making a different kind of movie. As soon as you get into something that's aimed at markets and commercial products, you start doing this business of designing a product for a market. It's a very different process. It's not easy. And an awful lot of your time will be spent in developing the concepts and the treatments and the outlines rather than the script. The script should take you a week to do, but coming up with the idea can take you a year. You may actually have, if you are just doing it on spec, you may well put it aside for a year, then come back to it another year later and do another little bit of work until you get a very clear idea of something that you can pitch to other people. And that means if you say the 3 or 4 lines of what the story is to someone, when they say, what's it about? And you tell them, and they go, oh, that's interesting. That sounds very good. Then you've got the pitch. Then you begin to write the treatment, which is a present tense narrative, which is going to tell the story from the beginning, middle, and end. Now, as I say, it's a document that's part business plan and as well as a blueprint. It's a peculiar vehicle. The first script, the pre-production script that goes out to try to raise funding, is usually accompanied by a well-written précis, which is very literary in some respect. But then when you get into production process, the script gets broken down, it gets simplified, it gets in terms of cast, location, props, costumes, all these things are labelled and taken out so that each scene you know what's going to be in it, so that you can schedule it, you can make sure that your art department can make sure it's got the props and the costumes and the makeup all sorted out, and your scheduler, your assistant director can work out the scheduling so that he knows that these are all daytime shoots, these are the nighttime shoots, this is in that scene, this scene's at that location, so we can shoot that scene after we shot that, but that means a change of costume because this is before they got shot and this is after they got shot, so they got blood in there. And working out all these little details for the schedule it makes it a lot easier if the script is very clean and clear about all these different elements are. That doesn't make it an easy read for people later on, but it makes it very good for the production process. And as I say, the glamour of it all, that's a minor part. Most of the time, making filmmaking is just hard slog. Now, I just want, before I take some questions, just point out that there's 2 things that I teach when I teach screenwriting. One is all this stuff about sort of documents that you need to have and the production process. But the most important thing I outline for people is that every script, in a sense, has got to have a hook, a first act crisis, second act development, of turning points in crisis, and the third act, which is the resolution of the action and the confrontation and the denouement of some satisfactory nature. Every single script, every story has to have these components. Now, where it begins to be individualized and become really complicated, and when you go to look at some of the more advanced writing classes and read the writings about different sorts of screenplays and such like, it's all about the characterization and all about how you organize the your hero, your protagonist, your antagonist, the confidant of the hero who learns all the secrets of the hero. Then there's the mentor characters that come in, and then there's the gatekeeper characters who they have to get past in some conflict manner of some sort. And it gets more and more complicated, and each genre has its own little mixes of these things. And you as an individual writer will also find your own character mixes that work dramatically or comically in some fashion. And these types of persona only appear at different points in the film. And so arranging them so that they come in at this point and this point, that point, sometimes each character will take on different aspects of this film. The protagonist can actually become an antagonist at one point and then back again. You can play around with these elements. The hero may be the mentor for another character in the subplot. But all these elements do come into play, and it's in that area where the complexity of a screenplay really develops. It's what makes a great screenplay. But your basic script, beginning, middle, and end. Hammer that into people's head. Get something interesting to hook people's ideas. Tell you what the film's all about. Move to a crisis, turning point. Film gets starting up underway. Then a midpoint where something changes radically, and then the film's pace is picking up and so on. So you're always working with that kind of parameter, set of parameters. As I say, they call it stagecraft. It's on in theatre, and we call it employment in TV and film. Right. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, should we take some questions?
Take notice of other people's opinion of your writing. You can, if somebody criticises your writing, ask them how to make it better. That's all. If they can't tell you how to make it better, they don't know nothing. Their opinion's worthless. And always thinking, oh, well, I'm doing this wrong, and so I've got to stop doing that. I must do something else, and then trying to do something else. It's stopping and then starting again. And it's best to keep on going. Work out what it is that your niche is, and what your particular vision is. And that's I've never realised what vision actually meant until quite recently. I'd never realised that that there's a definition of it in some sense. In fact, I can't find a definition of it even now. But some writers, some people seem to be able to have this clarity of thought as to what they do and how they can get it done. As I say, Anthony Chen just struck me as one of those guys. He knows what he's doing. Now the thing is, can he do it again? And he's a little bit worried about that because he feels that he got lucky and he knows what he's doing because he discovered he knew what he was doing rather than knew what he was doing when he started. And I think there's an element of that. And I think recognising your strengths and going with them and finding the right market position for you. Now everybody wants to make lots of money, of course, and the movie making world, some people make a lot of money, most people don't, and you forget that. Similarly, everybody wants to write a great big novel that is going to be Nobel Prize winning or whatever. There aren't that many of those, and most of the people that have written those kind of novels, they never made any money. They died young and frustrated. There's a whole history of great writers who had terrible lives. Do you want to have a terrible life and then write a great novel because of it? Do you want to risk that? Or is it writing a great novel gives you a terrible life? Because I think just writing big novels locks you away, stops you communicating with people except through that one form, and it can make your life very hard. But maybe you can't do anything else. I don't know. I think it's being very clear as to where you want to go. If you want to be in the film and TV industry, have it in your mind that you're not just a writer. You have to be a producer. You have to know the business. It's about business. It's about designing product. If you want to go to the independent film world where you're going to be independent and it's arty, and you've got to think, how do I do this with a low budget? I've got to find very talented cameramen. I've got to find be able to recognise talent that you can co-opt into really special projects and have them work for nothing for you, and because people want to do those things. Being able to communicate that is your job. It's not in the writing, however, because nobody's reading. It's presenting your material. So knowing how you're going to approach your career from a very early age, and do it when you're in your 20s, because it takes 10 years to get anything going. 20s, 10 years later you're only in your 30s, and then you've got a career. If you're starting in your 30s, then you've just about got a career. You're starting in your 50s, and you've got your film start. You finally got that film made in the 60s. How much of a career have you got left? If your health is okay, fine. But there's a lot of. When you get to 50, you will find that your friends will be having the heart attacks, and then you get to 60, you find your friends are having the cancers. When you get to 70, if you're still cool and running and so on, you're one of the few. Most people begin to get problems with breathing and their eyesight, and the life cycle, I'm afraid, is relentless. And I think this is why you've got to get it done. Be very clear early on, you stand a much better chance. But of course, if you miss that moment and you feel you've still got something else, what else can you do? You just do it. And in fact, just in the end, just do it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. I think I have missed opportunities simply because people said, oh, if you do that, it's not going to be very good because you haven't got enough money, you haven't got this, you got that. And I've said, no, let's wait for the next thing to, until we've got the perfect situation. Never happens. And that, I've lost 10 years of my life on that with a film called Fat Englishman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we didn't get to talk about that.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, the original film is a film script that I wrote, which was about a bunch of boozy fat Englishmen that was they were hanging around a bar and being miserable and fat and stupid, and a Japanese girl came selling Sapporo beer there, and she saw in them an opportunity to get into the English market by including them into a commercial where they was drinking. As soon as they drank their Japanese beer, they all looked like sumo wrestlers because they were big and fat and so on. And she thought, this is funny. And sumo wrestlers with a cloth cap and taking whippets around Hull, and it was all based in Hull, would be a funny advert. She makes this advert with these guys who are paid in beer, and it's a big success. And they're all invited as part of as a thank you thing to Japan for what they think is a free sex tour of Southeast Asia. But when they turn up, the Japanese company actually thought they were real sumo enthusiasts, and they've got them in an international sumo wrestling competition. And it's like these guys, they're all tattoos, and they're ugly and they're stupid, and they're trying to. They realise what a disastrous PR situation they're in, and they're trying to clean them up and get them trained at least so that they do something in the ring. And they cheat outrageously, and they lose. But they cheat in such an outrageous way that they're given the award for fighting spirit, which is the losers thing for that you would get in this. But of course, when they go back to the UK, award for fighting spirit, they're winners. They don't know what it means, and so they're now heroes. So it was a crazy story about which I thought I could do with a bunch of fat British comedians. That, I'm afraid, it won the HAF award for the best Hong Kong projects, and it made me realise, I can do this, get in the independent film industry easy, and write script, get money. I got a lot of interest from it, but they wouldn't accept me as the writer, as the director of it, because I hadn't directed anything before. It was too big a project, they said, too much money resting on you, the script's good, but not you as a director, you have to get another director. And I said, well, we can. I was offered $1 million Hong Kong dollars to make it. And people said, you can't make it for $1 million Hong Kong dollars. It's not going to work. And I'm saying, no, I don't think so. And I said, I'll pass on that, and we'll wait for the big money. Big money's never come. If I'd have made the stupid film then, hell, it would have been in making it, but I would have made it, and I would have been making other films. I would have had my first feature then. That was 10 years ago. And that was a big mistake, not doing it. It's gone into America. We sold the option to America, and they're still developing. It's become Fat Americans. It's set in Detroit. And the first thing that, once they'd done the deal with me, after saying, no, you're going to have lots of creative control and blah, blah, blah. Once they did the deal to me, they said, do they have to be fat? Do they have to be English? I said, it's called Fat Englishman, But no, it's they've rewritten it. And I've seen the scripts, and it doesn't have that flavour, a local flavour of a British comedy in it at all. It's become an American sports movie about an ex-linebacker who gets involved in a sumo wrestling competition, which is it's not the same, and it still hasn't been made, and it may well come back to me. And now I think I can make that movie.
Exactly. You never know.
So unless they're going to pay me a shitload of money to keep the option, I think that option's going to come back to me. And
how long did the option concept for?
Well, originally they did it for 3 years, and then they renewed it, and then renewed it and renewed it, and they've renewed it a couple of years back, and it should come to me this year, and we might probably give them an extra year simply because I don't think we're ready to take it on right this moment till I finish getting this film out. Once this is out of the way, if they haven't got it made or got into production by the end of next year, then I'm going to grab that back. I've got another movie I can make in the meantime if I get the money for that. But that's definitely on the cards now. I've got my eye on doing that. Then the Have people in Hong Kong will be very happy about that. Finally, this damn film that won award and got a lot of publicity will get made. And then I'll be, the blue-eyed boy once again.
Here's hoping.
Well, that's right, and that was one of the major mistakes. I missed my opportunity. So, don't miss your opportunities.
Thank you. Lawrence's book of short stories is available for sale. How much is it?
Well, it says here 98 Hong Kong dollars. Now, what's that in? It's what?
It's 6. I think.
6, right?
It's
6.
I think it's 6. It's 98 divided by 6.
Oh, right. 98
Yeah.
divided by 6.
Yeah, you're talking about the exchange rate, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's about
6.
No, it's 7.
No, Hong Kong.
Oh, sorry, 6.2.
Yeah, 6.1 or 2 or something like that.
Oh, right. So how much is that? My arithmetic is still completely haywire. Oh, she's going to work it out then. I will sign copies. There you go. Could be a very rare item.
So it's about 16.
16. There you go.
Could say 15 or 16.
Well, yeah, give us 15. 15. And you have to blog about it and put it out on Twitter. I want full publicity here. It will encourage the publishers to put it in the bookshops as quickly as possible.
And the publishers are actually, you're saying they are going to be available in
Singapore. Yeah, they should. They do make their books available here, and they do get it into the bookshops and so on. But they are very slow. The publishers are the type of publishers that university press type publish. So it's kind of, if you go to the Chinese university websites, you can buy it off there direct and so on. But because they're kind of in that academic zone, they don't really have a lot of ideas about publicising and utilising notoriety and personality and getting critical acclaim of any kind, really. So I'm hoping that word of mouth will go out. So $15. Anybody got any change? Don't all rush to buy. I was going to say, I thought this might be of interest to you. One of the techniques I used to work out how to shoot this damn thing was using a previs program. I don't know whether that's going to actually play. It's a little cartoon of the film. By using these sort of these programs, so one gets a good overview as to whether you're on exterior locations, interior locations, what sort of shots you're going to do. It's nothing terribly fancy. I can't get it. See, you have a rather handsome young man over there, and there's this guy with the glasses beside him. And how many directors do you need on a feature film? Everybody's a bloody director on a low-budget feature film. Everybody argues. It was endless arguments and fights every day. And that's right. Now it's working. We have the sequence, and I just very quickly plotted it through using this so that I had a very good overview in my mind of the type of things that we were going to be shooting. And remembering I had to get a boat, and I had to shoot on a boat, and I had to get all this sort of stuff going on. And this is what you can do very quickly with the software that's out nowadays. There's even better software now for this sort of pre-visualization. This isn't a shoot the script. It's just a technique used to help you just envision how you're going to be doing the script.
Storyboarding
Yeah.
software.
And it's very rough kind of storyboard. If you get into it with a real storyboard artist, they will actually be framing the stuff properly, so that you know exactly what shot you're going to get. This is much more of an overview as to what's is going to happen, and a rough idea. And surprisingly enough, when you see the film, you can see the parallels between this and the film. They're all dressed differently and with different coloured hair and different people and so on and so forth. But you will see the story vaguely in there. But that's something. If you do write screenplays, it's worth getting one of these programs and then play your own screenplay through it. You can actually get to the point where you put voices in yourself, and you can make a real hardcore animation. There are some people who do this so well, and then you say, "Why bother making a movie?" And they can make really good animated stuff like this really work.
All right. Well, let's give
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time
Right. So.
I know we have to give up the... Oh, no.
I'm ready to write and take mine.
You didn't sign mine.
I didn't, no. I can sign it now.